Don't take her too seriously, guys, my fiancé smirked, his glass raised under the dim light of the bar. She just works in some pathetic cubicle all day. You know, paper pusher, office drone. The table roared with laughter. His friends clinked glasses, their smug grins burning into my skin. My cheeks felt hot, not from the wine, but from the sting of betrayal that only the man you love can carve into your soul. Hi everyone, my name is Claire. And I have one question that's been circling my mind ever since that night. What do you do when the person who swore to love you makes you the punchline of his joke? I remember staring at him across that table, the same man who had whispered promises into my ear just weeks earlier, telling me I was his partner, his equal, his future. Yet here he was, reducing my entire existence to something his friends could mock over whiskey. The bar smelled of spilled liquor and fried wings, but all I could taste was ash. The laughter didn't sound human anymore. It sounded like knives clinking against glass, cutting through every piece of dignity I had tried to hold on to. I forced a smile. I laughed along. My voice cracked like thin glass, but I pretended not to notice. Inside something shifted. He leaned closer, placing his arm casually around my shoulder, as if his cruel words had been nothing but banter. As if he hadn't just stripped me naked in front of men who barely knew my name. I glanced at him, searching his eyes for even a flicker of regret. Nothing. Only pride. Only that smug satisfaction of a man who thought he was untouchable. I excused myself early that night, the sound of their laughter chasing me out into the cold air. My heels clicked against the pavement, each step echoing a promise to myself. You will not forget this. You will not forgive this. When I got home, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Mascara smudged, lipstick fading, but my eyes were sharper than ever. I whispered it to myself like a vow. This is not the end of me. This is the beginning. Because little did he know, while he mocked the woman he thought was stuck in a cubicle, I had been quietly building something greater. And soon, the stage he humiliated me on would become the very place he'd choke on his own regret. The first crack had formed. The collapse was coming. When I slid into bed that night, he was already asleep, breathing heavily, one arm sprawled across the sheets as if nothing had happened. As if my dignity hadn't just been auctioned off for his friend's amusement. I lay there in silence, listening to the hum of the city outside, and thought about all the nights I had sacrificed for him. The overtime hours I had worked, the dinners I had cooked, the moments I had put his dreams before mine. And for what? To be belittled into a punchline. The morning came with sunlight that felt sharper than usual. He kissed my cheek lazily like a man tossing spare change into a cup and mumbled, "Don't be so sensitive, Claire. They were just jokes." Jokes. The word rattled inside my chest like a wasp trapped in glass. I nodded because arguing would have only fed his ego. But deep inside I was done bleeding quietly. I walked into my cubicle that morning and saw it differently for the first time. No longer a cage. Not a pathetic box like he had painted it. Oh, this was the chrysalis. And I was almost ready to break free. You see, what he didn't know was that for months, my boss had been grooming me for a senior role. Late-night strategy calls, confidential projects, cross-country opportunities. Doors were opening for me and I had been keeping it close to my chest. He thought he was mocking permanence, but he was mocking transition. That week, I poured everything into the final presentation for the board. I spent nights at my desk with only the glow of my laptop and the rhythm of my heartbeat keeping me awake. Every slide, every number, every word felt like one more brick in the empire I was building. Not for us, not for him, but for me. Meanwhile, at home he grew restless. "You've been so busy lately," he said one evening, sprawled on the couch, scrolling his phone. "What, do you think you're gonna be some CEO or something?" He chuckled to himself, not realizing he was predicting exactly what was coming. I watched him from the kitchen doorway, my fingers still tingling from typing out my resignation email to the local branch. I wanted to tell him right then, wanted to let the truth slice through his arrogance. But no. The timing had to be perfect. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about shouting. It was about silence, patience, and precision. And so I smiled and replied softly, something like that. That night he fell asleep thinking he had won. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing the game had only just begun. The storm wasn't on the horizon anymore. It was already here. The call came on a Thursday morning. I was in my pathetic cubicle, as he called it, surrounded by gray walls and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. But when my boss's name flashed on my screen, everything shifted. "Claire," she said, her voice warm but steady, "the board was unanimous. We want you to lead the expansion in Seattle. It's a huge step up, regional director. Relocation covered. Salary increase. You've earned this." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The world outside my cubicle blurred. Seattle. Director. A whole new life. My chest tightened with the kind of joy that was so sharp it almost felt like pain. I accepted without hesitation. The ink on the offer letter was still drying in my inbox when my fiancé texted me. "Pick up wine on your way home. The guys are coming over tonight." I stared at the message. Wine for him, more laughs at my expense for them. They would sit in my living room eating food I cooked, drinking from glasses I washed, while mocking the woman who had just been offered the kind of career they could only dream of. But I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new tab and booked a one-way ticket to Seattle. Departure date, 2 weeks. That evening when I walked through the door, he didn't notice the shift in me. He kissed my cheek like always, complained about traffic and laughed at his own jokes while I set the table. But I wasn't really there anymore. My mind was already in Seattle, in my new office overlooking the skyline, in my new life where his smirk could no longer touch me. Later, as his friends gathered around the TV, one of them shouted, "Hey Claire, how's cubicle life treating you?" They all laughed. He glanced at me with that same smirk, proud of the little stage he'd built for himself. I smiled. I laughed softly. But this time my laughter wasn't fragile. It was layered. Because while they mocked, I already knew my exit plan. Every cruel chuckle was fuel. Every careless insult, a nail sealing the coffin of this relationship. That night, when the house finally went quiet, I slipped into the bathroom and looked at my reflection again. The same mirror. The same woman. But not really. Not anymore. Pathetic. I whispered, a smile curving my lips. No. Powerful. The clock was ticking and he didn't even hear it. The countdown had begun. The first crack appeared when I stopped asking him for permission. Normally I'd run little things by him. Weekend plans, dinner ideas, even what wine to bring home. But now. Silence. I moved differently. Quieter. Sharper. Every day after work, instead of rushing home, I was closing accounts, forwarding documents, boxing up pieces of my life in secret. And he noticed. One night, he leaned against the doorway as I folded laundry, his eyes narrowed. "You've been distant. Is something going on at work? Trouble in your little cubicle world?" His tone was half concern, half mockery like always. I smiled faintly, folding a shirt with calm precision. "Something like that." He chuckled, confident in his blindness. He thought I was stressed, maybe even insecure. He didn't realize he was standing next to a woman who had already packed half her soul into a suitcase he'd never see. That weekend, I visited my sister under the guise of catching up. Instead, I handed her an envelope with my spare keys and a list of boxes she'd help ship once I was gone. She hugged me tight, her whisper brushing my ear. "You don't owe him your silence forever. But you do owe yourself freedom." Meanwhile, at home he grew louder. More dismissive. Almost threatened. I could feel his unease bleeding through his casual digs. When I stayed late at the office to finalize transition papers, he accused, "What, are you seeing someone there? Some suit in a better cubicle?" He smirked, but it didn't land. His words didn't sting anymore. They just sounded small. By the following week, I had my resignation letter drafted, my apartment lease terminated, and my Seattle apartment keys mailed to me. Every document signed, every loose end tied neatly in a bow. All the while he bragged to his friends about how tame I was. How lucky he was to have a fiancé who stayed in her lane, who laughed at his jokes, who didn't demand more. If only he knew. The night before my departure, he fell asleep beside me, his arm heavy over my waist. I lay awake, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. My chest ached with a strange mixture of grief and triumph. This was the man I thought I'd marry, the man I once planned a forever with. And yet, as his chest rose and fell in careless sleep, I knew the truth. Forever was never meant to include him. The clock struck midnight. I whispered into the dark, not for him but for me. "Tomorrow you'll wake up to nothing." And with that, the final piece of my escape slid perfectly into place. The morning of my flight, I moved like a ghost through the apartment. The sun had barely cracked the blinds, yet every detail of the room felt sharper. The coffee mug he always left in the sink, the jacket tossed carelessly on the chair, the faint smell of his cologne clinging to the air. It was the last time I'd see any of it. My suitcase was already in the trunk of my car. My resignation letter was sitting on my manager's desk. My new life was waiting on the other side of the country. When I leaned over to kiss his cheek goodbye, he barely stirred. He muttered something in his sleep. My name maybe, or another woman's, I didn't care enough to know. I smiled softly, the kind of smile that held no love, only closure, and whispered, "Goodbye." By noon I was gone. Out of the city. Out of the state. Out of the life that had kept me small. 2 days later, while I was standing in my new corner office overlooking Seattle's skyline, my phone buzzed violently. Dozens of missed calls. His name flashing like an alarm. I didn't answer. But I knew exactly what was happening. Because earlier that morning, my company had announced the promotions internally. Photos, names, new offices, new titles, circulating through the network like wildfire. My fiancé, in all his arrogance, had decided to show up at my cubicle to gloat, to maybe stage a grand apology, thinking he'd find me humbled and desperate. Instead, he found an empty desk. My old coworkers, buzzing with congratulations, had told him the truth. Claire's not here. She's gone. She's running Seattle now. I could almost picture the scene. His smirk dissolving, his confidence cracking, the confusion twisting into something darker as the reality sank in. That night he finally sent a text, just 4 words. "You left without me." I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. 1,000 possible replies flickered in my head, but none of them mattered. Some silences are louder than words. So I locked my phone, slid it into my drawer, and poured myself a glass of wine. The city lights sparkled below me. My reflection in the window looked different. Stronger, freer, untouchable. For the first time in years I breathed without weight. And while he sat in the ruins of a life he thought he controlled, I was already building something far greater. Something he would never be a part of. The begging began within days. First it was the late-night text. Long paragraphs dripping with fake regret. "Claire, I didn't mean it like that. You know me. I was just joking. I love you. Please come home." Then came the calls. Dozens of them back to back, his voice messages unraveling from confident to desperate. "Claire, pick up. Let's talk. We can fix this. Don't throw us away over something stupid." And finally, the one that almost sounded like a cry. "Please. Don't leave me." But I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I finally understood. The man I loved never truly saw me. He only saw a reflection he could belittle, a shadow he could shape to make himself look bigger. And once that shadow walked away, he was forced to stare at the smallness of his own soul. At work I stood taller every day. My new team respected me. My boss called me a natural leader. I signed contracts worth millions, gave presentations that made boardrooms fall silent. The girl in the cubicle was gone, and in her place stood a woman who didn't need validation. Least of all from a man like him. But still he didn't stop. One night my phone buzzed with a video call. Against my better judgment I answered. His face filled the screen, tired, unshaven, eyes red. Not the smirk I remembered, not the arrogance. Just a hollow man staring at the ghost of the woman he lost. "You don't understand," he pleaded, voice breaking. "It was just one stupid night. I didn't mean it. I was trying to be funny. Please don't let this be the end of us." I studied him for a long moment, silent. And in that silence I realized something chilling. He wasn't apologizing because he respected me. He was apologizing because he lost access to me. To my care. To my loyalty. To the version of me who made his life easier while he tore mine apart. My chest ached, not with love but with clarity. So I said nothing. I ended the call. And for the first time I didn't feel guilty. That night, as I looked out at the Seattle skyline glowing against the dark, I whispered a truth that felt like both freedom and fire. You don't get to come back from mocking me. Because when a man laughs at your worth, he doesn't deserve to witness your rise. His last attempt came not with a call or a text, but in person. It was a Friday evening, the office glass towers reflecting the fading sun, when I stepped out of my building and froze. There he was. Standing on the sidewalk, suit rumpled, eyes scanning the crowd until they locked on me. "Claire," he called out, loud enough for strangers to turn their heads. My heart thudded, but not from longing. From finality. Because I knew this was it. The confrontation I had been walking toward all along. He rushed to me, his face a patchwork of exhaustion and regret. Please. Don't walk away. I bought a ticket here. I needed to see you. I messed up, I know that. I shouldn't have mocked you, I shouldn't have made you a joke. I was stupid. But don't throw away everything we had. Don't throw me away. His voice cracked on the last word. The arrogance was gone. The smirk gone. All that was left was a man staring at the reality of his own irrelevance. People moved past us, their footsteps echoing on the pavement. The city hummed around us, alive and merciless. I stood there, my heels planted, my new life rising tall behind me in steel and glass. I didn't throw you away, I said softly, my voice steady. You did that yourself the night you decided I was nothing more than a cubicle joke. He shook his head violently. No, Claire, that was just me being dumb with the guys. It didn't mean anything. I leaned closer, my words sharp and calm. It meant everything. Because it showed me exactly how little you valued me. And the worst part? You didn't just laugh at me, you wanted the world to laugh with you. His lips trembled, but he stayed silent. He had no defense. For a moment I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered the sound of his friend's laughter, the heat in my cheeks, the way he looked proud of himself while I shrank. That memory burned hotter than any sympathy could cool. I took a step back. You don't belong in the life I'm building. Not now. Not ever. His hand reached out, desperate, but I didn't take it. Instead I turned, the weight of the past falling from my shoulders like ash. Behind me I heard his voice crack one last time, Claire, please. But the city swallowed his plea. And for the first time I walked away without looking back. 2 months later, the final thread of our story snapped. It happened quietly, not with screaming, not with slammed doors, but with a letter. A wedding invitation landed on my desk one morning. One of his closest friends was getting married back in our old city. I recognized the names instantly, those same men who had laughed at me that night in the bar, glasses raised at my expense. I knew what it meant, he would be there too. At first I considered tossing it aside. But then I paused. Because this time the stage wasn't his. It was mine. I RSVP'd yes. The night of the wedding I walked into that hall in a sleek black dress, my posture carrying every ounce of the life I had built since leaving him. Conversations hushed as I passed. Those men, his friends, stared wide-eyed, no laughter left in them. And then I saw him. My ex-fiancé. He froze when our eyes met. He opened his mouth, but no words came. His fiancé, yes, he'd rushed into a new engagement, clung to his arm, smiling blindly, unaware of the history between us. But his face told the whole story. Regret. Hollow and sharp. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Because when the band struck up a song and the dance floor filled, his friend, the groom, took the microphone to thank his guests. And in front of hundreds he raised a toast to me. To Claire, he said, grinning. The one who made it out of the cubicle and now runs an entire region. You're proof that strength outshines arrogance every single time. The crowd clapped. I smiled graciously, lifting my glass. But my eyes stayed locked on him. The man who once smirked as he reduced me to nothing. Now he sat there, pale, his fiancé's hand still hooked to his arm, while applause washed over me. He couldn't smirk anymore. He couldn't laugh. He could only watch as the world recognized what he had thrown away. Later that night, as I stepped out into the cool air, the city lights stretched wide before me. I closed my eyes, breathing in freedom that no one could mock, no one could diminish. The girl who once cried in a bathroom mirror was gone. In her place stood a woman who had walked through betrayal and built her own empire.